The fact that the undersecretary just said there are biolabs. Okay, let's start from there. Is Russia pissed about that? Very well, maybe. Now we have this story from USA Today. This is why getting the fact perfect is important. They say fact check. False claim of U.S. biolabs in Ukraine tied to Russian disinformation campaign. So right there, you have interesting points. U.S. biolabs. Okay, well, they're Ukrainian, according to Victoria Nuland. She said Ukraine has biolabs. So you see how they do this. They slap U.S. biolabs in front of biolabs, and all of a sudden the whole story's fake.
They fact check a different story than the one that's actually being discussed, and then anytime the story comes up, they get to slap false on it.
So here's what they say. The claim. There are biolabs in Ukraine funded by the U.S. government. We read on this show a U.S. government site talking about U.S. funded research in biolabs in Ukraine. So I don't know what that was all about. Similar posts claimed Russia destroyed 7 of the 11 supposed labs in missile strikes. The claims are wrong. Independent fact-checking outlets reported. I actually don't think those claims are true, to be honest, because we looked at the map of missile strikes and the map of labs, and they don't line up. It's like weird that people would make that claim when all you need to do is say Putin's mad about labs.
He's probably blowing up stuff near the labs so that he can take the labs.
I would assume Russia wants the biolabs, as Nuland actually said in front of Marco Rubio.
Historically, you see border skirmishes that aren't considered war. Like if an enemy is setting up artillery on the border, on the other side of the border from your country, you may send in a party to destroy the artillery and then come back. And it's not really an act of war. It's more of just like, or sometimes they go in and they'd steal food from like the enemy, but it wasn't really war.
You ready for this part of the same article?
Oh, yeah.
The same article says the Ukrainian and U.S. governments partnered in August 2005 to prevent the proliferation of dangerous pathogens and related expertise and to minimize potential biological threats, according to the treaty. Interfax Ukraine reported in May 2020 that part of the agreement was aimed at modernizing state laboratories in the Odessa, Kharkiv, Lviv, Kiev, Vinnytsia, Kherson, and Dnipropetrovsk regions. Whoa. I'm trying. Those efforts included making repairs, updating equipment, and purchasing supplies. The Security Service of Ukraine said the laboratories financed from the state budget are subordinate to the Ministry of Health and the State Services on Food Safety and Consumer Protection, according to Interfax Ukraine. The U.S. Embassy in Ukraine sought to set the record straight on these biolabs claim in April 2020, calling the theories disinformation spreading in some circles in Ukraine that mirrors Russian disinformation regarding the strong U.S.-Ukrainian partnership to reduce biological threats. It sure sounds like they're trying really hard to claim that although the U.S. did partner and help Ukraine with a lot of the work they were doing in certain biological areas, these are not U.S. biolabs. Yeah, okay, well, no, that's true. They're not. They're Ukrainian, but is the U.S. involved? I'd sure like to know.
Well, usually they hire a company like EcoHealth Alliance to get involved for them so that they can wipe their hands of it.
Well, yeah, what's with our country and like funding all of this insane biological research around the globe, as you know, we saw with the Wuhan lab too. And I think, you know, this goes back to, the way this war has been presented to us in the media is that, you know, Ukraine is the good guys who can do no wrong, and we have to take the government of Ukraine's word over anything else. And as we've seen, we've been fed so many lies as this war has happened, between, you know, imminent nuclear meltdown that turned out to be false, as Zelensky was calling for a no-fly zone. And I think it just goes back, when you're in a war, propaganda is very important, and propaganda to help your side win is very important. And a lot of that is just being fed to us by our media.
I want to read the last portion of this article. They say, because this is interesting. Based on our research, we rate false the claim that there are U.S. biolabs in Ukraine funded by the U.S. government. The posts misrepresent a treaty between the United States and Ukraine aimed at preventing biological threats. The labs are owned and funded by the Ukrainian government. The Security Service of Ukraine and the U.S. Embassy in Ukraine have said the claim is false. Reports indicate the claim is tied to a years-long Russian disinformation campaign aimed at discrediting the U.S. Okay, fair. I totally accept all of that. Okay, so Ukraine does have biolabs. Right. So when the narrative came out that Russia was concerned about biolabs in Ukraine, that was legitimate?
Yep.
Like, is Russia really concerned about that? All right, sorry, everybody, you know, that they're spreading this disinformation. How about we just talk about the truth, that there are biological research facilities in Ukraine, and that Russia wants to seize them.
Well, because
or the U.S. fears Russia will.
Yeah, well, like I said on our last episode, the only time you need to really come in with these fact checks is if there's some kernel of truth that you don't want people discussing. That seems to be the case very often. Maybe I'm being a little hyperbolic, but we see it frequently. And I will say this, after the last 5 or 6 years, it is absolutely laughable that they think they would have any credibility talking about biological laboratories, bioweapons labs, and where they're getting their funding, and B, Russian disinformation. It doesn't exactly bolster my confidence in the veracity of their claims that they're using that phrase.
Look at this. Look, we have the story from Bloomberg. This is funny. China pushes Russia conspiracy theory about U.S. labs in Ukraine. Russia wouldn't just put Russian. I don't know why they labeled it that way, titled it that way. Foreign Ministry urged U.S. to name viruses stored in labs. Beijing has yet to call Russia's military action an invasion.
I bet the word Russia gets better clicks, better internet search results than Russian.
Right. That's why they did it.
These are the same types of headlines that we saw at the beginning of the COVID pandemic when people were pushing the lab leak theory. I'll never forget the one from the Washington Post when they literally said Tom Cotton is repeating a conspiracy theory about COVID that has already been debunked. Right. Like this is the same exact game plan that they did when COVID started with when they covered for the lab leak from China.
what I'm starting to notice is when you debunk something, it doesn't mean that it wasn't right.
Well, the difference today between disinformation and something that's true is only a couple weeks or months now.
Biolabs itself was a conspiracy theory.
Yeah.
But it's because what they do is, if you bring up to a journalist, what's up with these biolabs in Ukraine? They immediately retreat to the mott and go like, oh, U.S. doesn't have biolabs in Ukraine. It's like, whoa.
That's not what
I didn't say U.S.
Right.
I said, what's up with these biolabs? So what happens is you'll get a regular person. So you'll say something like, did you guys hear about, you'll be at a party and you'll be like, did you hear about these biolabs in Ukraine now? Now they're confirming it. Russia, of course, probably is not happy with it. And then someone goes, there's no U.S. biolabs in Ukraine. You're making that up. And then I'm just like, I never said U.S. A regular person, though, might be like, of course there, I was reading about it. And then they'll pull up on their phone and they'll say, there are no U.S. biolabs. See, everybody, he was wrong. That's what they'll do, and people will conflate these stories and not realize it.
My favorite
Don't play
thing-
games with me because I'm going to be like, I didn't say U.S.
My favorite
Get
part
out
is
of here.
that's the stuff you talk about at parties.
It's
So
well,
important.
Are you serious?
No,
Of
no,
course
I
I
am
do.
serious. Yeah, I
Yeah,
love
of
it.
course I do.
Also-
I walk into a party and I grab a beer and I'm like, how about that biolab? And everyone's like, oh, yeah, and we're all drinking.
I just got to say, I really hope they're not eating bat soup in Ukraine.
Seriously.
Because that's the most logical explanation of where biological weapons
where it
come
came
from,
from.
right? You were a conspiracy theorist if you thought that the virus, which was first infecting people right near a biological weapons research lab, was made in a biological weapons research lab instead of coming from a bat.
So what happens is you got all these labs in Ukraine, and China's saying, like, tell us what viruses are in it. In like a month, all of a sudden, there's like 12 new viruses that emerge in Ukraine. And then the mainstream media goes, that was an armadillo. That one was a penguin.
Ukraine's bat
That one was a
infestation
seagull."
problem is out of
No, it's
control.
got to be a different animal for each different virus that
But the-
emerges from the biolab.
But the sad thing is it's serious. Like when I was at the Daily Caller back when COVID first started, we were one of the first news outlets that ran stories about the potential for that this virus came from a lab, and we got dinged on Facebook for it. The way Facebook works is the way you get one of those fact checks on your post.
Yep.
Is a fact checker has to write an actual story. One of their certified fact checkers has to write a story about your post, and you get dinged. And if you get a certain amount of them, you get your account demonetized. We got one for running lab leak stories. Like, this is the media and big tech and the deep state working together to suppress information that they don't want the public to know.